Hello future CPA champions, welcome to the video. I hope you all are doing great. So without any delay, let's dive into and simplify the topic, the audit risk model. So what is audit risk? Let's begin with defining that. The audit risk is the risk that we the auditors might unknowingly fail to modify an opinion on the financial statements that are materially misstated. So why audit risk exists? Because we auditors do not provide an absolute assurance. We provide a reasonable assurance because of some of the inherent limitations of an audit engagement. So there always exists some amount of audit risk that we might provide an inappropriate opinion on the financials that are materially misstated. So we auditors always prefer to keep the audit risk at a level as low as possible. So this is the core formula of the audit risk model. We have three types of risks that multiply to and contribute to the audit risk. Inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. We'll study each one of them in detail with the help of an analogy. So let's begin. Let's imagine you are worried about a burglar entering your house. Now, we have two scenarios here, scenario A and B. In scenario A, we have a house which is located at an area which is well lit and a very busy street. And this house does not have many luxurious or precious type items inside. And then we have house B on the other hand, which is quite isolated and it has precious luxurious items and jewelries inside. So, can you tell which house is more vulnerable or tempting to the burglar? So, of course, we can easily conclude that house B is more riskier type than as compared to the house A. How? Because of the scenario, the nature of the situation, we can easily come to that conclusion that B is the riskier one. So this is what inherent risk is all about. So it is the susceptibility of an assertion to misstatement independent of internal controls. So management who are responsible for the financial statements, they make certain assertions about the financial statements. So those assertions are having a risk of being misstated even before considering any internal controls applicable at the client's company. So that risk is inherent risk. Inherent risk can be due to industry complexity. When industry is more complex, there is a more chance of misstatement. Then it can be due to non-routine transactions. When more unusual and frequent transactions are existing, there is a high risk of misstatement. Then it can be due to management's integrity. When management's integrity is questionable, of course, there can be risk of fraud and misstatement, which will in turn increase our inherent risk. So now let's continue with our example. Let's suppose that same isolated house now has some security systems. It has locked doors, alarm systems, security cameras. Now, isn't this house seeming to be safer than the house which we saw earlier, which was well lit, located at a busy street? Yeah, now this house seemed to be safer. So with all these controls implemented, but what if these controls fail? What if these controls are not working properly? And isn't there a chance that even after implemented controls, there is a risk that burglar might break the controls and still enter the house, right? So that is control risk. So likewise, control risk in the audit scenario is the risk that internal controls of the client might fail to prevent or detect material misstatement. Control risk is a risk that we auditors do not impact. We just assess it for our clients. It already exists. So we just assess it for our clients. To assess it, we might look at the design of the internal controls, and also we might look at the operating effectiveness of the controls, whether they are working properly over time. Now, let us suppose that house has a neighborhood. We can see our neighbors on the screen with the binoculars in their hand. They are a very attentive kind of neighbors. They saw something, they detected that something suspicious is going on in the neighboring house. They took out their binoculars from the drawer. They detected that there's a burglar, and they immediately called the cops. So this is what a sharp and attentive audit team does. They always lower the risk of a misstatement not being detected. And a passively reviewer audit team, they always increase the detection risk. So detection risk is the only risk that we auditors can control in the audit risk model. So to keep the overall audit risk at a low level, we need to balance out both the sides. On one side, we have inherent risk and control risk. On the other side, we have detection risk, which we can control. So when we assess inherent risk and control risk, both are increasing. We prefer to keep the detection risk at a lower level. How we keep it lower? By increasing the substantive testing procedures and making sure that we do not miss a misstatement. So inherent risk and control risk, when they are assessed to be high, we keep detection risk low and balance it out. So opposite is also true. When we assess that inherent risk and control risk both are low, then we can afford to have less substantive testing and have a higher detection risk, which will balance out our overall audit risk. Now we have extended model of the audit risk model. It has nothing special, but I would like to mention here that IR and CR together they form what we call as risk of material misstatement, in short RMM. And our detection risk has been divided here in this expanded model into two types. One, the analytical procedure risk, that analytical procedures might not detect a misstatement, and other is test of details risk, that test of details might not detect a material error. Now, coming on to the conclusion, this model guides every phase of the audit engagement. It's not just about a planning stage, it guides planning, execution, conclusion, all three of them. For example, when we execute audit procedures, we get to know about some of the material errors that were not predetermined during the planning stage, that were not already predicted. or we find out some fraud scenarios, or uh, some fraud possibilities that were not already predicted during planning. So now what we'll do, we'll go back to the model, we'll increase our inherent risk, and accordingly our detection risk will be impacted and substantive procedures will be revised. Now this model guides every stage of the audit like that. So that's all for today. I hope you found this video helpful. Do comment your feedback so that I can improve, and keep learning.